Going back to, like, the relationship of my parents and
Mhm.
whatnot, and I mean, in Latino culture, like, I mean, my sister and I, it's 2 sisters, right? We don't have a brother or anything, and we grew up in a pretty strict, like, environment, and I think Hispanic parents are definitely more strict on the girls, right?
For sure, for
So
sure. I can
I
speak to that.
think yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. So, as much as, like, in the moment when I was younger, I'd be like, "You like, this is too much." Like, they were still very lenient in a lot of ways. Like, you can go out with your friends and blah, blah, but just, like, the boys, when it came to boys, like, "This is no, you have to wait,"
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But just my mom has, willingly, like, when she comes home from work, she's cooking for us, and that's just and it's not just, like, a traditional thing, like, just because she wants to out of her heart, like,
Mhm.
my mom of service wants to, give us good food and, like, wash our clothes and all that stuff, and just seeing that those little things that mean a lot to me, I know mean the world to my dad too, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna carry that,
absolutely.
like, in my relationship.
No, and I wanna link to something that you're describing there in terms of how you sort of measuring how good the relationship can be and what you both are wanting, and I would look through it through the lens of culture.
Right.
Because you've touched on some aspects of it, right? When we were talking about how you grew up. I don't know how you would describe culture for you. What
Mhm,
I'm saying, just to give an example, when I'm talking about culture, so I usually think about it in two lenses, and this is
mhm,
just mainly built on my own life experience. So you have the overarching American culture, those of us that grew up in this country, there's aspects of being here that you sort of inherently learn, right? But then those of us that have family from different origins of other countries, then there's like what I call the subculture that's within that. And sometimes that is a little bit beneath American culture. It may be equal to American culture. It may be more important than American culture because of, again, the values, the morality, maybe there's religion attached to it, the way that you carry yourself, the type of person that you would even allow yourself to be with or your parents would want you to be with because, culture for a lot of folks
right.
matters.
Mhm.
How would you define the way you grew up and how culture may have shaped what you saw in like Tim, for example, to make you want to even try to build a relationship with
That's
him?
such a great question. My gosh, let me think about that.
Sure.
I think I guess going back to, like, the relationship of my parents and
Mhm.
whatnot, and I mean, in Latino culture, like, I mean, my sister and I, it's 2 sisters, right? We don't have a brother or anything, and we grew up in a pretty strict, like, environment, and I think Hispanic parents are definitely more strict on the girls, right?
For sure. For
So
sure. I can
I
speak to that.
think yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. So, as much as, like, in the moment when I was younger, I'd be like, "You like, this is too much." Like, they were still very lenient in a lot of ways. Like, you can go out with your friends and blah, 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 but just, like, the boys, when it came to boys, like, "This is no, you have to wait,"
Mhm.
and stuff like that. But I think just that and the way that my dad and mom have been, like, in a sense, like, servants to each other, not servants, but just my mom has, willingly, like, when she comes home from work, she's cooking for us, and that's just and it's not just, like, a traditional thing, like, just because she wants to out of her heart, like,
Mhm.
my mom of service wants to, give us good food and, like, wash our clothes and all that stuff, and just seeing that those little things that mean a lot to me, I know mean the world to my dad too, and
Yeah,
I'm gonna carry that,
absolutely.
like, in my relationship, like, I feel like acts of service is big, and just, like, knowing Tim, knowing the things that are of value to him and,
Mhm.
bringing that into our relationship. So I think culturally, like, just wanting to serve each other, and it shouldn't be like, "Oh, the woman's doing everything for the man." We were way past that point. Like, yes, I grew up in a Hispanic household, but my grandma, sure, she still has a little bit of that mentality, like, "You need to serve your husband."
Sure,
He
sure.
should be eating before you and all that stuff. But my mom and dad, thankfully, were a little bit more like, with the times in a sense, like, yes, but we should be a service to each other, and so
Yeah.
I've just seen what a 50-50 partnership is. So I want to make sure that, and I feel like Tim and I have already had that. So I want to make sure it translates over into when we're married and when we are living together. I am going to mimic a lot of what I see in my mom. I know I'm going to do
Yeah.
that as a wife. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate you mentioning those stories. I
Mhm.
think this is where it gets very nuanced, right?
Yeah.
This is where I think, how do we say? This is why I think people get confused about why these roles and these examples matter that we see.
Yes.
Let me give you an example why I'm making this point. So, what I hear a lot in today's society, and this is mainly through either it could be through I'm working with somebody, it could be my own personal encounters, it can also be through content that I'm consuming online. Because I consume a lot of content for women speaking to women and men speaking to men. Because again, I'm trying to really understand. And I hear a lot about female empowerment, which I'm totally in support of. But I also hear some things that I feel might be making it harder to bring people together, meaning men and women. So we talk about like these concepts of independence, right? And to me, independence should be like the starting point for everybody, right? Like in my mind, maybe I'm biased. In my mind, everybody should be independent kind of before we're coming together. Like I'm not finding you out of high school where you're dependent on your parents. So my expectation is kind of you can take care of yourself, you know how to do basic human adult things,
Yes.
and you should expect similarly from me. If I'm not, to me, like you kind of can't get in the door, so to speak,
Right.
if that makes sense. So I don't really look at that as like a metric to say you should overemphasize that part if you're so independent, right? And I've talked about it with some other guests on previous episodes about the idea of interdependence. And I kind of hear you describing it as you're talking about things, meaning when I use that word, because I like to define words, what I mean when I say that is you can be independent. I can be independent, meaning you can do pretty much everything you need to do in your life by yourself. I can do the same, right? So it's not a question of do I need you to do these things for me? It's a choice of would I rather have you do things that you are better at than me and vice versa because it makes my life easier. We can make each other's lives easier because this thing called life is very, very difficult.
Mhm.
Stuff gets thrown at us constantly, i.e., the pandemic. So, for so many of us, the expectation, in my mind, this is just my opinion,
Right.
instead of preaching and only trying to focus on independence for all people, that should be there. But to me, it's more important to talk about how can we balance each other in the way where in areas maybe you're stronger and I'm maybe not as so much so. That's a good way for me to find somebody who can complement me in those ways
Absolutely.
rather than I need to be able to do this without you and you need to just kind of join on my ride. Like just come on my journey and I'm just going to keep pushing ahead. I think that type of rhetoric, not that it's dangerous, I think it just makes it really hard for people to see the value of actually learning how to work through issues with somebody
Yes.
and not thinking as soon as you hit a minor bump in the road, you should jump ship because the grass is always greener and
Right.
just go find somebody else. Because I think a lot of people are finding out that that might not necessarily be true. Do you have any
100%.
thoughts on that?
Oh my gosh, 100%. Like, of course, there are things that are just like a no, like a no go, kind of like the cheating. If someone were to be cheating on me, like that's just jump ship, as you said,
Sure.
right?
That's a deal breaker. That's what I call those deal breakers. Things you're not going to
Absolutely.
compromise on.
Yeah. Or someone who's manipulative, toxic, based on my previous examples.
Mhm.
But like you said, there are things I feel like if it's, and I don't want to say that's the the line. Oh, if they cheat, that's it. No, like I'm sure there's a lot of other things that I'm not mentioning that could be
Sure.
breaking points, but I feel like the majority of it is stuff that you can work through as a couple. If you find that right person, like you said, that compliments you,
Mhm.
that can help you again become the better version of yourself. The things
Absolutely.
that I lack, like he helps me, he's helped me grow to develop, I guess, those skills within myself, you know what I mean? And vice versa. Like, and that's why I think what you're saying is absolutely true, like based on my own experience, based on the relationship I've been in. Because of course we've had our issues to work through too, but that's the key. We've worked through them
Correct.
because we both came together and made this conscious decision to tackle the issues together. And even though sometimes they may be hard conversations, like I know that and when I say that, when you hear that a lot of this stuff makes your relationship stronger, like that couldn't be more true, because now I feel like we're invincible to a lot of things
Mm.
in a sense. And that's why it's crucial to find that person that compliments you. If you guys are exactly the same, well, one, kind of boring, I think.
It can be.
It can be, and
Definitely
it
can
is
be.
too. Like find, like, no one's gonna be perfect. Okay, so if I'm not perfect in this way, I've found someone that can help me kind of based on their example, like even in the ways he's acting, like you said, action is big. Like I see how he carries himself from the beginning, from the get-go, how he takes care of his parents, like that's huge for me. Like
Mhm.
he's always made it a point to be there for them and to, you know, just take care of them like overall. And I think that's another way that we're very similar is we do have that family, that strong family dynamic. But
Yeah.
had I not, like I know we would have supported each other in that too. And he's come around to my family a lot. Like my family's a lot bigger than his, way bigger. So coming in, that was like a big cultural shock, you know. But
There you go. There's culture
he
again.
yeah, culture's big, but he assimilated, you know, so well, and everyone just embraced him. And um anyways, going back to the whole point of, it's just so important to find the person that's gonna, you know, embrace and enjoy the highs with you, but also get through the lows with you.
Yes, that's really really important.
Yeah,
That's essentially what I was trying to drive home. I mean,
right.
I talk so much about compromise and deal breakers, like I said, because like I do that with my clients sometimes, like when they're trying to date,
Hmm.
and I'm like, if you're trying to intentionally go in and actually date people,
Right.
we would do a better job, I think, of
Yeah.
filtering people out. Meaning, maybe you have a couple of dates, but then you quickly determine that they're not really looking for the same thing, or they're not kind of moving in the same way that I am,
Right.
and then you politely move on. I think what happens for a lot of us though is we have no plan. There is no intentionality. We just kind of fall into stuff, and then
Yes.
we're kind of shocked that they don't work, or that we end up getting into situations we're not ready for.